At least 143 people are believed to have been killed and a further 140 wounded following that devastating gun attack at a concert hall in Moscow yesterday.
Yes, an affiliate of the Islamic State group has claimed responsibility for the attack, a claim that the United States so far says is credible.
However, the deputy head of Russia's National Security Council has suggested that Ukraine was in fact responsible and has vowed vengeance.
Well, it is certainly very complicated and this death toll is rising all the time. Well, to discuss this further, we are joined in the studio by defence editor at the Evening Standard, Robert Fox. Very good morning to you, Robert. And it is a very complicated picture this morning, isn't it? We're not even sure who is to blame for this attack at the moment.
Lots of strands. The Americans certainly got some kind of tip-off. How specific it was is far from clear. Certainly the Russians were warned, and certainly in your intro, the bit that is right on, whatever happens, whoever this was, they are desperate for the public narrative. That's what's going to go wall-to-wall on state TV and state-controlled social media, that it's Ukraine to blame. Already there's been rather a timid statement from the FSB, the security service, the massive security service. Oh, the fugitives that they have arrested were heading towards Ukraine because, in quotes, they had contacts there, or they were believed to have had contacts there. It is so thin to the outside world, but there's something rather extraordinary about this, because it looks as if Russia was unaware, unprepared for this, and it's symptomatic of something going on way down south on the borders there, that Russia appears to be losing control of a very fragmented picture in the Caucasus. And it's dangerous because Russia is losing there and its big ally, Iran, is losing there.
Robert, I remembered stories from a few weeks ago saying that US intelligence had warned Russia that an attack was imminent. Why didn't they take heed of that?
Well, they tried to turn that to an immediate information wars advantage. Oh, the Americans would say this. This was the line that came from Moscow. They're trying to destabilize us. But there is something, it's probably not quite the time and the place to go into it in great detail, but there's something rather crazy and uncontrolled about Russia's immediate foreign policy, which I think ISIL is jumping in on. They're trying to mess around in Syria again. They're expanding in the East Mediterranean. They're trying to take over with they've beefed up the old Wagner Company again. It's now called the Expeditionary Corps. And I think that the Islamists really object to this, particularly with the very peculiar stance they're taking with the Houthis and the Red Sea at the moment. The Houthis have said, well, really, China and Russia are going to back us because we have agreed not to attack Russian and Chinese ships. It is very complicated. But into this, a highly focused group like ISL or ISIS can push in, and it can have devastating effect. And boy, they know better than anybody how to exploit the publicity space.
Excuse my ignorance, but I thought ISIS had been wiped out in Syria.
Never say never with an idea like that, and I'm afraid to say it's absolutely the same predicament we're going to face with Hamas. Yeah, you can kill a whole bunch of fighters. They killed a lot, as you rightly say, in Mosul, but and in Raqqa. Remember,
it was Russia when they got involved. They were mostly to...
Yeah, and it was huge and it was bloody. But the trouble is that Russia is finding that, particularly in places like the South Caucasus, as I was saying, on their own border, and they've got a large Muslim population inside their own border, they have to go at it again and again and again. And they've got three things on at the moment. They've got Ukraine, they've got that, and they've got, they're getting more and more involved, as I said, with Syria, Iraq, and Africa. And for all the way that the Russian economy now, it's a defense economy, it's a military economy, seems to be booming with the high price of oil and so on, they're pretty stretched.
So ISIS growing and back on the map, what does this mean for the UK, if anything?
Well, we've got to take this seriously because ISIS is back and it's going on the offensive. And it's going on the offensive out of Afghanistan, and which means it will go and could go in several directions. And you cannot rule out a spectacular in Europe.
I have to ask you, Robert, is ISIS resurgence in Afghanistan anything to do with Joe Biden's botched evacuation there in, was it 2021?
Joe Biden's botched, but I think the whole policy was a mess for the past 10 years, and you could feel it physically when you were there. And it was not only the US, but its principal towel holder, who was the UK, our view as to what could be done and should be done about Afghanistan, and particularly at this level on counter-terror, counter-global terror, was unfocused.
Is it fair to say that... Sorry, Ellie.
No.
Is it fair to say that our time and our troops' lives, all the men and women who bravely fought in Afghanistan, has all that gone to waste?
Not necessarily, but in fact, it's what soldiers have to do. They have to fight wars that are wars of choice and that do go wrong. That's part of the business of fighting. But that is very difficult in today's climate to sell. As you probably know, young people are not joining the armed forces, or if they're joining or getting halfway, they're leaving, because it's part of the risk, and we are committed. The trouble is that ever since 1989, I think we've sold, and it's come from people at the top of the civil service, that defence is a needless expense. Defence in its widest thing, and it isn't just soldiers in uniforms and glorious parades. It is going to be more and more important. Anything through from food, energy, you name it, and terror has come back on the agenda, and that's what we should pick up from the Moscow Crocus attack.
Yeah, indeed. Robert Fox, really good to see you this morning.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you very much.